to another edition of The Economics. I'm Derek Puak.
And I'm Serena Chan.
And we wish you another Happy New Year.
Happy New Year!
In the new year ahead, we shall look back at one of the hottest topics in 2009 and 10 in the economy, which is the hot property market and the rising property prices.
In view that bursting property bubbles were what fueled recessions in the United States and Europe, today we will discuss about how the Singapore government tackled the heating Singapore property market and prevent it from harming the economy.
So first up, we shall look at the reasons of the rising property prices in Singapore. The first reason is the ever-growing number of consumers. Singapore has become one of the leading major cities in Asia and the world, especially since the birth of integrated resorts and the opening of the Marina Bay Sands. Pertaining to the rising economy, Singapore requires more migrant workers and talent like never before to support its growing economy. As such, the influx of foreigners increases the consumer group demanding property locally, hence raising both demand and prices of Singaporean property. The second reason is the low global interest rates. These low rates is mainly caused by central banks in various countries taking action in response to the global financial crisis. Some major economies had their interest rates lowered close to zero, and their low rates may endure till the United States economy strengthens. This has influenced Singapore's local interest rates to drop as well, reducing the cost and increasing demand for bank housing loans. This may result in more people and speculators who are financially able to buy property, raising property prices and demand in Singapore. The third reason is a rising positive speculation in the Singapore property market. Investor confidence in the local property market has mostly been positive, partly due to the rapid recovery of the Singapore economy in the global financial crisis and the continued rise in property prices. More people are buying housing property not for residential but investment purposes, as they expect high returns from property investment given the growing property market. This raises demand for property, pushing property prices further up.
To have a better outlook on the measures taken by the Singapore government in 2009 and 2010 on tackling about the issues of the hot property market, we have invited Felicia Park, an economist, who will give us an update on the property prices. So, good morning, Serena.
Good morning.
So, I would like to ask, since over the past 2 years, the government has implemented policies to tackle the rising property prices. So, actually, what is the main aim of this whole thing?
Well, there are actually three main aims of all the government policies, and the most important of these three main aims is actually to reduce investor demand, because a lot of speculation has been going around in the market, the property market, and this has caused a lot of demand for property that is the main cause of rising prices in Singapore. So the main aim of these government measures, I believe, would be to reduce investor demand by reducing speculation in the property market.
Okay, so the other question is that, so the other two aims are what are they actually?
Well, the other two aims, aside from the most important aim of reducing investor demand, would be to firstly make housing affordable for people who really want to buy it, those genuine buyers. So the government has actually some measures implemented to help middle-income Singaporeans better afford housing. And I think the third aim would be, of course, to prevent a property bubble from forming in Singapore. Because if that happens, these investors would face a lot of financial losses, and it will have negative repercussions on the Singaporean economy. So in order to prevent that, the government also, I think that would be the last aim of the government in implementing these measures.
So could you explain more about the Singapore's policies on these?
Well, sure. The government policies that were released in 2009-2010 can actually be categorized into three categories based on the aims of these measures. And the first category would be measures targeted at increasing the supply of public housing in Singapore. So two such measures were released in August 2010. by the government, and the first of these measures was to increase the supply of HDB, and especially those HDB flats under the design, build and sell scheme and executive condos, and these new flats will be released in heartland areas such as Yishun and Punggol. And also the second measure would be that of shortening the completion of the build-to-order flats, which will also help to increase the supply of public housing in Singapore currently.
Okay, thank you. So now we shall go and look at an interview with a HDB spokesperson about the rising property prices.
Can you tell us more about the impacts of the two government measures to increase the supply of public housing?
These two measures will not have much immediate impact on prices, but they do play a role in lowering prices as supply of housing will increase. However, the main cause of rising prices is the huge demand for housing. Therefore, increasing the supply actually would not have as much effect on prices as compared to reducing demand.
So, Felicia, after understanding the first categories of measures, so what's the second category? Could you explain it?
Yeah, the second category of measures is by the government is actually to help genuine home buyers, especially those in the mid-income range, to help them afford housing at this point of time when prices are really high. So in August 2010 as well, the government released one measure, which is to actually provide a CPF housing grant for first-time buyers of HDB flats. So according to this report right here, Singaporean first-time buyers with a monthly household income of between $8,000 to $10,000 are now able to buy flats under the DBSS scheme, as well as executive condo apartments with a Singapore $30,000 CPF housing grant. And so the government with this grant actually help middle-income Singaporeans make housing more affordable for them. Yeah.
Seems really more affordable now. Yeah. So now let's look at the two opinions of first-time buyers, and we shall see how the measures actually impacted them.
As new home buyers, how has this CPF housing grant benefited you?
Oh, yes, certainly made housing more affordable for us, especially since prices are so high nowadays. It's definitely a good move by the government to protect the interests of us genuine buyers. Yeah.
Thank you.
So now let's go for a commercial break.
기강 씨 요즘 너무 바쁘잖아요. 시간을 아껴줘야죠.
누나 피부는 더 아껴줘야 돼요. 식스모션 세탁 시간은 진짜 빨라요. 우와, 순식간에 깨끗해졌죠.
식스모션은 때론 강하게 때론 부드럽게 움직이니까 손으로 직접 구석구석 헹궈주는 것 같아요.
시간도
헹굼도
더 좋아진 식스모션.
역시 달라요. LG 트롬 식스모션.
So Felicia, you actually go through with us about the two categories of measures. So what is the third category?
The third category would be to reduce investment in the property market, and I think it's the most important category because that is the major objective of the government in releasing such measures. And this category is actually, because it's so important, the government actually put more focus on it, and in this category there are more measures, and actually there are 6 measures in total. Yeah.
Okay.
The first two measures by the government to reduce investment in the property market was firstly to bar interest-only loans for housing projects, and secondly to stop the absorption of interest payments of apartments by developers. This would actually cut off a lot of cost-lowering incentives for property developers and property investors, and hence would help discourage speculation in the market. The third measure released by the government is the seller's stamp duty, which is sort of a government tax on all residential properties and residential lands that are bought and sold within 3 years of purchase. So placing the stamp duty tax on residential property increases the cost of investment for investors, and also causes them to reap lesser profit when they sell off their investment at the end of the day. So it means that investors get less profit from property investment, and hence it will discourage them from investing in property itself. The fourth measure is actually targeted at buyers with one or more outstanding mortgages. So basically, the government implemented the increase of minimum cash down payment for buyers with at least one outstanding mortgage from 5 to 10%, which means that buyers who already are currently paying off one mortgage would have to pay a larger down payment for their second mortgage, which is 10% of the loan that they're trying to borrow. And buyers with an existing mortgage can only borrow up to 70% of the value of the new property that they are going to buy. So this actually helps to reduce the affordability for buyers with outstanding home loans and discourage property investors from spending over their limits and finding themselves in financial difficulties later on due to the investments they had made earlier. The fifth measure was actually to increase the minimum occupation period for non-subsidized public housing from 3 to 5 years. It means that people who buy public housing would have to stay inside the house for at least 5 years before they can sell off the property. So having to occupy the property and on top of that wait for 5 years before it can be sold, it adds uncertainty into the investment and it will discourage investors from buying government housing to invest. Well, now looking at our sixth and final measure, the government has actually disallowed concurrent ownership of both HDB flats and private residential properties within the minimum occupation period of 5 years. So it means that during the minimum occupation period, owners of property cannot own private housing and a public housing concurrently. This would actually prevent current owners of property from acquiring multiple properties for investment and reduce investment in the property market in Singapore.
So now, let's look at an interview with the property guru and about the effectiveness of the measures.
Do you think these government policies are effective to curb the rising property prices?
The government measures are effective so far, as the property market shows signs of stabilization. This is most likely caused by the accurate analysis by the government of the main source of demand fueling property prices, which are increased speculations and investments in the property market. However, whether these measures are successful in stabilizing the property market in the long run is an issue left to be contended. But we believe that if prices show signs of rising, and the government will intervene and implement more measures to cool the market.
We have come to the end of another edition of The Economics.
We hope that you have better insight about the situation of Singapore's property market. Have a good day.
So what you want to eat? Awesome!
Bak kut teh.
Let's go.